Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari. Is it on? Make sure it's on. Make sure there's enough volume. Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Padadikacharya Ashtotar to the Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padadikacharya Ashtotar to the Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananda Koti Vaishnavindra Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Well, the fortunate few. Okay. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiv Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and to Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, and to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashtapayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On the 16th day of September 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in Canto 4, the creation of the fourth order, Chapter 25, the descriptions of the characteristics of King Puranjan, text number 58. Sorry. not just 58, it's 57, 8, 9, 60, it's 61. So when you chant, just chant one of these, obviously. We'll chant the first one. Kvachit pabantyam pibati madadam hadabingvalaha ashnantyam kvachadashnati jakshatyam sahajakshiti kvachit pabantyam pibati madadam hadabingvalaha ashnantyam kvachadashnati jakshatyam sahajakshiti kvachit pabantyam pibati madadam hadabingvalaha ashnantyam kvachadashnati jakshatyam sahajakshiti kvachit pabantyam pibati madadam hadabingvalaha ashnantyam kvachadashnati jakshatyam sahajakshiti kvachit pabantyam pibati madadam hadabingvalaha ashnantyam kvachadashnati jakshatyam sahajakshiti. I forget which one. One of you guys. Kvachit pabantyam pibati madadam hadabigvalaha ashnantyam kvachadashnati jakshatyam sahajakshiti. Not yet. Okay. Go ahead, go. Kvachit pabantyam pibati madadam hadabigvalaha ashnantyam kvachadashnati jakshatyam sahajakshiti. He's definitely improving day by day. Go ahead, Raj. Got it? Can you see it on the board? All right. I will carry on. Kvachid gayati gayantyam rudatyam hudati kvachid dashantyam hasati jalpantyam anujalpati kvachid dhavati dhavantyam tishtantyam anutishtati anushete shayananam andaste kvachid asatim kvachid chunoti shinvantyam pashyantyam anupashyati kvachid jigvati jigvantyam prishantyam sprishati kvachid chashochatim jayam anushochati dinavat anurishati rishyantyam muditam anumodate. I don't know if you can tell what's going on there. There's a lot of imitation. Okay, I will read this word by words quickly. Kvachit sometimes, pabantyam, while drinking, pibati, he drank. Madadam, liquor. Madabigvala, being intoxicated. Ashnantyam, while he was eating. Kvachit sometimes, ashnati, he ate. Jakshatyam, while she was chewing, saha, with her. Jakshiti, he chewed. Kvachit sometimes gayati, he used to sing. Gayantyam, with his wife, when his wife was singing. While his wife was singing. Udatyam, when the wife was crying, udati, he also cried. Kvachit sometimes. Hasantyam, while he was laughing, while she was laughing, hasati, he also laughed. Jalpantyam, while she was talking loosely, anu, following her, jalpati, he also talked loosely. Kvachit sometimes, dhavati, he also used to walk, dhavantyam, when she was walking. Tishtantyam, while she was standing silently, anu, following her, tishtati, he used to stand. Anu, following her, shete, he used to lie down, shayanayam, while she was lying on the bed. Anu, following her, aste, he also used to sit, kvachit sometimes, asatim, while she was sitting. Kvachit sometimes, trinoti, he used to hear, shunvantyam, while she was engaged in hearing. Pashantyam, while she was seeing something. Anu, following her, pashyati, he also used to see. Kvachit sometimes, jigrati, he used to smell. Jigvantyam, while his wife was smelling. Sprishantyam, while the wife was touching. Sprishati, he was also touching. Kvachit at that time, kvachit cha, sometimes also Shochatim, when she was lamenting, Jayam, his wife, Anu following her, Shochati. He was also lamenting, Dinavat, like a poor man. Anu following her, Rishyati, he used to enjoy, Rishyantyam, while she was feeling enjoyment. Muditam, when she was satisfied, Anu following her, Modate, he felt satisfaction. Translation. So this is Puranjan going along with his wife, doing everything. When the queen drank liquor, King Puranjan also engaged in drinking. When the queen dined, he used to dine with her. And when she chewed, King Puranjan used to chew along with her. When the queen sang, he also sang. Similarly, when the queen cried, he also cried. And when the queen laughed, he also laughed. When the queen talked loosely, he also talked loosely. And when the queen walked, the king walked behind her. When the queen would stand still, the king would also stand still. And when the queen would lie down in bed, he would also follow and lie down with her. When the queen sat, he would also sit. And when the queen heard something, he would follow her to hear the same thing. When the queen saw something, the king would also look at it. And when the queen smelled something, the king would follow her to smell the same thing. When the queen touched something, the king would also touch it. And when dear queen was lamenting, the poor king also had to follow her in lamentation. In the same way, when the queen felt enjoyment, he also enjoyed. And when the queen was satisfied, the king also felt satisfaction. I think we get the idea. Purport. The mind is the place where the self is situated. Now this is really a really deep purport. The mind is the place where the self is situated. And the mind is conducted by the intelligence. The living entity, situated within the heart, follows the intelligence. The intelligence is herein depicted as the queen, and the soul, under mental control, follows the material intelligence, just as the king follows his wife. The conclusion is that material intelligence is the cause of bondage for the living entity. The point is that one has to take to spiritual intelligence to come out of this entanglement. In the life of Maharaj Ambarish, we find that the great Maharaj first engaged his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. In this way, his intelligence became purified. Maharaj Ambarish also used his other senses in the service of the Lord. He engaged his eyes in seeing the deity in the temple nicely decorated with flowers. He engaged his sense of smell by smelling the flowers, and he engaged his legs by walking to the temple. His hands were engaged in cleansing the temple, and his ears were engaged in hearing about Krishna. His tongue was engaged in two ways, in speaking about Krishna and in tasting prasadam, offered to the deity. Materialistic persons who are under the full control of material intelligence cannot perform all these activities. Thus, consciously or unconsciously, they become entangled by the dictations of material intelligence. This fact is summarized in the following verse. Om jnana timirandasya jnananjana shalakya chakshu unmidatam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So we have been hearing all this time about King Puranjan and how he was seduced and came under the complete control of his material intelligence. And this is true for every single conditioned soul in existence. The conditioning begins from subtle and goes to gross. And the subtle conditioning is first that the living entity identifies with his external body. The false ego is there. That has to be there. And when you read Kapila Muni's teachings, we read them in third canto, you may remember that it's the false ego in interacting with the different modes of nature that produces, with the mode of goodness produces the mind, the mode of passion produces the intelligence, the mode of ignorance produces all the senses, sense objects, and all of these things. And so that first mistake we make is to de-identify or lose identification as Krishna's servant and try to identify ourselves as a separate entity. And for that we need this false ego. And we're also put into contact with the material energy, and that begins our long sojourn in material energy. So here we're hearing how this works, and that we're kind of seduced by this material intelligence. Material intelligence is a place in which all of these ideas for enjoyment kind of roll around, and we make plans for enjoyment, and we employ the mind and the senses in trying to achieve that enjoyment. And then there's a remembrance of these enjoyments. Now there's also remembrance of negative things, suffering. And so we our planning, which is, especially in human intelligence, when you get out of the animal kingdom, there's all kinds of ways in which you can plan to avoid pain and to enjoy things. And some of that is, elaborate manipulation of the material energy. Just see what we have today. I mean, we take it for granted. I remember I read once, long time ago, how forgive me, but this is just what comes to mind. The sewer system in London was first conceived by somebody. Until that time, what was going on? They had chamber pots, which is kind of a real euphemism, where you'd be sitting in a room and you'd have to go in some pot and take it out and throw it in the gutter. And so it was a huge mess, and it was stinky. So some guy uses intelligence. Oh, wait a minute, let's try this, And of course, imagine, we take it for granted, but there's all these pipes and everything, and it's taking the waste away and bringing fresh water, and all this stuff. And but it's a big arrangement, and it's a big convenience, Nobody wants to live in a place that doesn't have that anymore. No electricity and no water, That's not even civilized. You can't. I remember when Vijay, you were in, you had called me from Chicago, or you wrote me from Chicago, and you'd gotten out of India, and they were saying, well, you can only stay here for 3 days, right, or something like that, right, because of the COVID, it struck. So he didn't know where he was going to go, so he called me up and said, well, let's see what we can do. I thought we could stay here, but no, you have to, go into quarantine and everything. So I asked Mukunda. Mukunda had moved down here. He had been staying mostly up in the farm. I said, there must be a place up there, Mukunda, where you were staying. Yeah, but it's pretty crude. He described like a mobile home out in the field with no running water, right? And no electricity. There's an extension cord, But it's, so I explained to Vijay about it. He says, no, that's not going to work. So eventually he was fortunate to get up in Maheshwar's place, and he came down here. We're very fortunate to have his association. But this is all a result. I mean, we are living in pretty much an artificial environment. But it's a result of years and years, hundreds of years really of inventions and things, and manipulating the energy and the whole, and of course now, part of it is that you can never see, when you're in the conditioned state, all of the different ramifications and results of your activities. And so now, on a mass scale, I don't know, I wasn't supposed to refer to this, but anyway, many people believe, it is often said, that there's something called climate change. Not just climate change, but anthropogenic climate change. Means it's caused by human activity. And so just going with that thesis, anthropogenic, caused by humans. Yeah. And I mean, there's two different schools. Some admit, there's obviously climate change. I mean, you can look at the scale; it's warmer and warmer and warmer years, but that's just a natural variation. It's not because of anything human beings done. But then there's a whole other school that says, no, because we're pumping up all of these carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the air. By what? By getting all these fossil fuels, burning the gas and the methane. Methane is more or less what we use for, cooking and heating. And coal, of course, and other things. So it creates these greenhouse gases which block the sun, or block the earth from irradiating heat into the atmosphere. So it gets warmer and warmer gradually. So, so the argument is, okay, so we've got all these conveniences, but there's a price to pay, but not right away. It's taken decades to build this up. So the problem is, it's a metaphor for even on our individual life, where we look for conveniences, we look for pleasures, but we fail to see the ramifications. And part of what we learn from the Shastra and from the Acharyas is to see the long range, see the ultimate ramifications of what we're doing. That's why the first lesson is you don't die, and you've lived before. This is just a short chapter in a very long book, this present lifetime. And so try to see the long view. As soon as you accept that I'm soul, not the body, and there's no birth, no death for the soul, he's unborn, eternal, ever-existing primeval, he's not slain when the body is slain, and what happens? Then what happens to us? You get another body. So that changes, it should change all of our calculations of what's good and what we should strive for. Because if we're just striving for the immediate good, employing our God-given intelligence, and doing that, then we fail to see the final ramifications, even in our individual life. Forget about the mass of society and the world. I mean, it all adds up, And so, in the Vedic culture, that's basic knowledge, And even if you're not full-on Vaishnav, you still think, well, I better watch out for my sinful reactions. Let me worship the demigods so I can get, and do all these sacrifices so I can get a better situation. And avoid sin. Because you don't get away with anything. Everything is written down, right? Everything is taken account for. This is Super Soul, this Yamaraj. So that means that there's a basic foundation of morality, of ethics, for our own good. And the ultimate morality, of course, is to completely dovetail your activities with the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that leads to the ultimate good. No more coming back. Going to heaven is another temporary solution. It's really no better than trying to create a heaven on earth through our manipulation of the material world. There's always a reaction, and you come down, chine punye marcha lokam vishanti. After enjoying God, the delights, Krishna describes in the 9th chapter. What is it? Tetam bhukva swargalokam vishalam chine punye marcha lokam vishanti. Evam tridam manupapanna gadakatam kama kama labanti. Therefore, going and coming, you don't make any progress. And then and you're still in the risk of getting away from these pious activities, getting to sinful activities, and going down to the other place, as we used to call it, and really suffering like anything. So what's the solution? Ananyas chintayanto mam. The next verse describes those who are simply thinking of me, without anything of the pure devotees. Then I preserve what they have. I give what they need. I preserve what they have. Yoga and Shema. In other words, he provides what we need for living in this world, and the security and safety. And at the end of life, you go back to Godhead. That's really the highest good, the ultimate good that you can strive for. So that's in a nutshell what we're trying to do, is to reform ourselves from the habit of being seduced by the material intelligence and trying to manipulate this world and our environment and whatever for our immediate good, prayas, and going for the ultimate good, shreyas. So here we see the description, it's a long description, of Puranjan's complete control by his material intelligence. That's really what it is. In other words, when you get the idea of some enjoyment, of something that you want to do, and you have the facility to do it, and there's no, then you do it. Or you strive for it. And that's exactly what we've just been hearing in all of these verses. Even if you can't do it right away, if your intelligence can, imagine it, you can dream about it. Prahlad says this is a large part of what enjoyment is anyway. Kutra shisha shuddhi sukha megatrishni rupa. He says it's very interesting because it's very pertinent, because he's talking about the intelligence in this verse. He says in his prayers to Prahlad, to Nrsingadev, he says, Kutra shisha. What is the use of all of this aspiration for material enjoyment? Ashish, like we use that ash. Ash is, hoping. Shruti sukha. Much of the enjoyment is just hearing about it. In other words, just the contemplation in the mind, the intelligence, right? So much. Oh, football season is coming. There's no games on, maybe a month away. Oh, let me think about it. I'll play this game and I'll meet with my friends. We'll talk about it. Remember last season? In other words, it's just a lot of, remembrance and anticipation. And the actual enjoyment has the nature of a mirage. Probably a Mirage, perfect pronunciation if you just read it, Mirage, Mirage. Mrigatrishni, what the deer, the foolish deer and other animals thirst after. That's what Mrigatrishni. And then Prahlada is speaking from the transcendental business. And really, is this body a good source of pleasure, full of all kinds of diseases and things like that? Kvedam kalevaram, ashesha rujam. Ashesha means endless diseases, viroha. So he's taking, the actual point of view of a learned person. But then he says, nirvijatena jotadapiti vidvan. Even a wise man who knows this doesn't desist, because kamanalam, the fire of lust, of strong desire, of addiction, he's absorbed in trying to extinguish this blazing fire of lust with little drops of sense gratification. Once you're caught up in that dynamic of sense gratification and then wanting it again and trying to fulfill it, even if you know theoretically that you're destroying yourself, you can't stop. He's speaking about people who get into drugs and just ordinary people. You get a whole, even if it's called sort of wholesome pleasures, it's still a bunch of addictions that are going to destroy you. So that's the situation that we've found ourselves in for thousands of births in this world, And now, great opportunity. We've not only come to the human platform, but it's civilized human life. To run around in the forest all day, and we've come in touch with this transcendental knowledge, and the wonderful person who embodied it, who showed it was real. It's one thing to find a book in a library or something, which is great if it's Prabhupada's books, but it needs to bring you forward into the experience of associating with devotees, to actually see the philosophy being lived. That is possible, that I can do it. This is important. And Prabhupada gave us that by working so hard against what would look like impossible odds. That's why he's the only one who did it. His godbrother said, well, I was already tried in England, I'm going to settle down and, preach here in my temple, or whatever they did. I don't want to offend, but we know what happened with the Gaudiya Math. The preaching stopped, except for Prabhupada, who actually had to leave the Gaudiya Math to do it. But he took on, by the instructions of his spiritual master and the faith in Lord Chaitanya's words, Prativritti Yachayati Nagaradi Gram, not, misinterpreting, it just means India. No, Prativritti means the whole earth, And so even what Prabhupada called the fag end of his life, he just got on that boat and came to America. And that prayer, that the Markandeya Bhagavatam is so seminal. I mean, the mood there, I feeling unqualified. I have no knowledge, I have no devotion, but I have great faith in the holy name. And you brought me to this place now. Please make my power of speaking such that it will affect their minds. And at first, he didn't know exactly where to go. I mean, he spoke at the YMCA in Pennsylvania, and he spoke at Mishra's place, and even got one or two followers there, interested people, But really, it wasn't happening. And Prabhupada would go back to the shipping office, to check on the schedule. And even after he'd been there a few times, he said, well, you check the schedule, but you never actually get on the boat. You never get a ticket, He had his free passage back if he wanted it. But to our great benefit, infinite benefit, he stuck it out and with faith, and Krishna just showered amazing success on him. Even Prabhupada was surprised at all that was going on, how it just exploded, Hare Krishna explosion. So why did that happen? Now, because Prabhupada was so wise that he didn't insist on any of all the rules at first. Just come to the loft here. Just step over the vagrants, the drunks lying on and come up the stairs, and chant with us. And then listen, when you get a little bit purified by chanting, he would give a talk, and some of them were receptive, such as Michael Grant, very receptive. And he had a few other followers who helped him get situated in 26 Second Avenue, and the rest is history, as they say. But the process is is one. In other words, the process is the same in every case where a soul in the human form comes in touch, and by great fortune, chants the holy name, sees the deity, takes some prasad. In this way begins the purification. Krishna from within is guiding. What does Krishna say in the Bhagavad Gita? Tesham satata yuktanam badadam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamapi yantite. Now the verse begins with Tesham, which means they. So I think this is part of what it means. What's going on in the previous verse. First he says, Aham savasya prabhavo mattak sarvabhavatade. The whole Sambandha Videya Prayojana is here in these 4 verses. So the Sambandha, who is God? What is this world? What's the relationship? Well, in a nutshell, in kind of a sutra form, it's that Krishna. You'll find this in the CC. Krishna is Sambandha. What is Krishna? I'm like Pratattvam Hadamiha Paramam Sarvasaktim Vrasavdim. So Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's there in the verse. I am the source of everything. And everything emanates from me. So all that we see, all of this energy, right, is coming from the Supreme. That's understood. Then he says, the wise who know this well, they worship me with all their hearts. Now we're in Abhideya. Abhideya means practice. You see? So, how to do it? Well, we're trained. We give an example. You chant Hare Krishna, do this, don't do that. 4 regs. The regs and the rounds. The rounds and the regs. Those are like the basic principle. And so if you start doing that, or if you just come for kirtan and you hear, then you come to the point of wanting to practice. That's the idea. Okay, matchitta, madgata prana. Then he's describing devotion. They're putting their minds on me. They're dedicating their life energy to my service. And they come together and speak about me, and in this way enjoy transcendental pleasure, For them, especially for those who are taking part in this process, he doesn't say how long. It could be a beginner, Well, I give the intelligence by which they can come to me. Krishna's in the heart. For me is coming knowledge, remembrance, and also forgetfulness, if that's what you want. So he's providing intelligence rather than the material intelligence is becoming purified and spiritualized. And so the intelligence, well, how can I arrange instead of, how can I, go here and enjoy this and go to this party and that. So how can I arrange my schedule so I'll have time enough to go visit the temple? That's the transcendental intelligence. Trying to figure out how you can deepen your involvement in Krishna consciousness. That's Krishna is guiding you from the heart. So that's the fortunate souls, of which were some of them, having gotten Prabhupada's mercy and Lord Chaitanya's grace, and of course all of the acharyas, we're interested in this. We're spending this valuable time, which so many others are getting ready to go into work, whatever they're doing, hearing Bhagavatam. Having chanted a bunch of rounds or worshipped the deity, done another service, So this is a great fortune. And what happens here is that even though there may be, and are latent desires and remembrances of enjoyments here and there, in other words, the material intelligence is still there to some degree, it's not completely purified. Our spiritual intelligence is getting stronger and more purified. Until we come to the point of this verse, which is very pertinent again, kamadinam. Katina katita palita duri deshas tesham jata maina kadonanattapa no pishanti. Utsrijaitan adiyotapate sampatam labdha buddhi. I've regained my intelligence. It says up until now, these kama, material desire, etc. Kama adina means kama, etc. Kama, krodha, lobha, moha, moda, matsara, lust, and anger, and greed, illusion, and all of these different things. They've been like forcing me to go here and giving me an idea to go here, do this, try to enjoy here. And they've been giving me orders, and I've been obeying them for thousands of births, They have not become satisfied by my service, nor have they shown me any mercy, So he's seeing this. Madhavendra Puri actually wrote this verse. So the enlightened soul is saying, I've regained my intelligence, labdha buddhi, and therefore I'm rejecting these demands. of my taskmasters, you know. But that's not enough, because we are by nature servants. If we're not going to serve lust, we got to serve something else, and that something else is Krishna. and you know, so therefore he says, I'm approaching you, my Lord. Please engage me in your service. You know, please engage me in your service rather than this other service. Now that I recognize that this service is, you know, causing me great suffering, life after life. So that's a wonderful, you know, that's really how Krishna consciousness works. And so in our practical sadhana, it means, you know, maximizing our time and our effort to place the mind on Krishna and keep it there. And the intelligence, hearing, reading and hearing, reading Srila Prabhupada's books, discussing them, taking notes, memorizing, absorbing the mind in the transcendental sound vibration. That's the means by which the intelligence becomes purified and strengthened, so that we can say, no, yes, I've had this impulse to do this, but it's completely out of bounds. I know it's wrong, especially if you're initiated. I've taken vows, you know. And so that no becomes stronger and stronger, but the yes to Krishna has to become as strong or stronger. And that's how you can get the strength. So, as we know, it's said, it's like a razor's edge, because if you become a little weak in your sadhana, then the allurements of the material energy gain strength. You become more allured, and of the material intelligence, which is always in there until it becomes pure. So that's the advantage of association and ashram, is that there's a structure, there are other devotees who can encourage you, and you know, just the peer pressure is often enough to just say, hey, I got to get out of bed here. It's almost time for Mangalarti, you know. And once you get into a routine, then it becomes easier, and you become conditioned to the spiritual side. So otherwise, you know, this is quite a series of verses here. It's like you're completely helpless. In other words, this is like, well, when my intelligence is telling me to, you know, do this, then of course I'm going to do it, you know, and because it's my idea. You know, you're identifying, this is my idea. I have a great new idea to enjoy, you know. Until you come to the extreme, like intelligence getting absorbed. I think of the video games, how it's a completely artificial world, but they're so realistic and so enticing. You know, you're the hero. You know, you get the girl, or you know, kill the enemy and anything. You know, and even they have it. You know, on the other side where you can be the bad guy. Right? Don't they have video games where you can be, you know, the criminal also? You know, you can get so absorbed. I tell this. Some of you didn't hear this before. You may not know it. First of all, we should know that in America, the Wi-Fi is much slower and more expensive than it is, say, in places like Japan or South Korea, or even in China like that. So that more powerful Wi-Fi makes for more realistic games, you know. So it's even more enticing. So these poor kids get on there, you know, and they become very expert. You can imagine how skilled you can become. Some of you may have also become experts. Some of you youngsters, I don't know. I played Pac-Man one time. I must confess, and that was as far as I went. I don't want to get involved in this, but you know, that's rudimentary. It's just the beginning. But now they're so realistic, you know, and absorbing. You can forget about your bodily needs. You've transcended the body. You're completely on this, you know, so-called. That's what I was just going to say. They have instances, you know, because they have whole internet cafes where people are sitting next to each other and they're all got their headphones on, absorbing the screen. So this poor kid died, and his head goes down on the keyboard, and they didn't even notice. He just stayed there for hours, and they're still playing. Finally, someone found him. You know, it's crazy. They have camps where the parents put the kids to cure them of video game addiction. Yes, it's like that. What is that? That's an ideal world where you're the controller, you know, where you're kind of the god. You see how addictive that can be. That's why we came to the material world. Well, I can't really do it in the real world, but let me do it in this virtual world, you know, and get the same rush. It's just like a drug. It is a drug. They recognize that. with gambling, and 4 regs should be another reg, no video games. But anyway, that's the material intelligence completely absorbed and strengthened to the point where you're victimized by it.
How many hours was it? 35 hours.
And surviving?
Yeah, they could have 10-minute breaks here and there.
Oh, they actually have contests. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a Guinness World Record, 135 hours straight. No break, less than 10 minutes break.
It's sick. Let's just call it sick. Okay. It's like a kind of a reincarnation. It's a willful reincarnation as what you want, right? But you're not really reincarnated, and eventually you got to deal with the body. It's that insanity. We've been engaging in varieties. I mean, it's an extreme in the present age, and that you can see how absurd it is. But taking a material body and living this is also a big video game. I think Sadhguru described it like that, like virtual reality. We're sitting here, and we've got the goggles, our eyes, and we're living. But it's not reality. It's a screen, really, and eventually it all disappears. You go to you have to get out of your comfortable seat, and in the heart the machine broke down, and now you have to go into another game, and you're not in charge of that game. The Maya puts you in a certain place. So that's. This allegory is really very cogent and dramatic. So the whole point is we don't want to be in this situation. Narada will explain the whole thing eventually, and we're also getting, of course, in the commentaries, Prabhupada is giving us what this means. But it's a very graphic description of the conditioned soul, and it should make us want to say, no, I don't want this. I want the reality of spiritual life and going back to Godhead, where that's the reality. You don't have to leave. It's not just a video game there. That's the actual reality. We're living in a virtual world now, which isn't. It's like a dream. It's described again and again like a dream. What is a dream? But just your ideal world. You put this together and you try to live there. But you can't stay there. You're not really in charge. Okay, let me. I don't have to read this whole thing again, but I'll read 1 or 2. You get the idea. When the queen drank liquor, King Puranjan also engaged in drinking. So you can see right away this is not a temple. When the queen dined, he used to dine with her. When she chewed, King Puranjan used to chew. When the queen sang, he also sang. Similarly, when the queen cried, he also cried. When the queen laughed, he also laughed. So he's completely under control of the material intelligence. And, I think his, the ideal, because we went through this whole period where they're meeting each other, seductive, and it was, oh, you're like the goddess of fortune and everything. Now he's really experiencing it. He's kind of a slave, he can't really enjoy. Okay, any comments or questions on this wonderful description of Puranjan and his material intelligence?
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
The story of Srila Prabhupada going again to the shipyard or wherever they were, that indicates that his mind was toying with the thought, gosh, do I just give up here? Nothing's happening. It's like, where's go back to Vrindavan, but no, stuck with the service, with the intelligence, and just.
Yeah, well, he even said in one of the early lectures, probably maybe at Dr. Mishra's place, yes, I'm planning to stay for 3 months. I mean, more or less that was his original plan. You can imagine where we'd be if he hadn't stayed for 3 months. Yeah, I mean, when you read Prabhupada's life and all that he did, it's very inspiring. It's like, whoa, and I have a connection to this person, whoever it may be, and I can try it. It's like, well, it's a very rare time that we have, and that we're so fortunate to be connected to Srila Prabhupada, and to be at least even trying to follow the program and to become an agent for fulfilling his mission, which is Lord Chaitanya's mission, it's Krishna's mission, the acharyas. And it's great to, when you read about, his relation to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, or that incredible book that you've been quoting from, by Bhaktivedanta Swami. So Prabhupada, it's not just Prabhupada, he's bringing with him the whole parampara. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, we have the main acharya is there. And so just to see a good fortune to have that connection and to be trying to and striving as best we can to fulfill their desire and be part of this movement and spread Krishna consciousness in an authorized way and so forth. It's a blessing that we can't even calculate, isn't it? I mean, that's the way I feel anyway. What did I do to deserve this? Somehow, what I didn't do also counts.
You just reminded me that Chintamani chastised Bilvamangala when he was endeavoring so strenuously to try and please her, please the senses, that she said, "Oh my God, if you would just put a little bit of the energy you're putting into trying to enjoy with me into service to Krishna, your life would be so auspicious."
Yeah, that's, and the austerities he went through, for that holy grail, Oh, yeah. I always visualize him getting, that last leg where he grabs the snake and he gets over and he actually fell down. It was a big bang. That's why she noticed, well, what is that? You can imagine the storms going on, So she had to nurse him, get him into the room, and then lie down, Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, Prabhupada was speaking about this, how he was going in Chintamani, and then she gave that instruction, if you had so much love for Krishna as you have for me, you'd be a pure devotee.
Yeah.
And Prabhupada said that was, Chintamani was his spiritual master coming back to him.
Yeah, speaking through her, yeah.
To guide him again.
Well,
the spiritual master comes back. If the disciple doesn't make it, the spiritual master comes back. The spiritual master is coming back instructing him.
That's why he recognizes her in his Krishna Karnamrita. She's the first one he recognized. Chintamani jayati somagiriya gurume. His initiating guru is Somagiri. But without that, little whip, from Chintamani, he wouldn't have broken out of it, And what's it? I'm sorry?
That was his spiritual master coming back. You know how Prabhupada said that if the spiritual master has a disciple and the disciple doesn't make it, the spiritual master comes back to help him. So Prabhupada said that's the spiritual master from his previous life coming back to help him.
Yeah. Well, really, that's why I'm telling you, the first chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita is really important to read. It's all about the gurus, not the guru, the gurus, and the relationship, the Shiksha Guru and the Diksha Guru. He even mentions the Vartma Padakshika Guru there, one who shows the way. The first person to give you a book or invite you to the temple or something. Without that initial contact, where would you be? So in this case, yes, Chintamani, his guru was speaking through him, or it was his guru coming back. And so he gives her full, honor. First word of his Karnamrita is her name. Chintamani jayati somagiriya gurume. So, and we want to maintain that connection by, acting properly and advancing in devotional service. The blessing is eternal.
So it's the question I have is in relation to your class, but also something Vijay Prabhu was mentioning yesterday. Something about you said something like, "Oh, I asked Krishna for strength, and he gave me what was it? Difficulties." So this idea of if you go through a lot of difficulties, then you become strong, hopefully, right? Maybe just commenting on maybe a comment on how that works, because a lot of the times when people go through difficulties, it's not all the time that they succeed, in passing. Exactly.
Yeah, well, I hate to bring this up, but it's like this phrase, no pain, no gain. It's kind of like that. The idea is that in devotional service, there's immediately you're like going against the grain. You have this conditioned personality, and you know, you're habituated to acting and thinking in a certain way. But by your intelligence, you understand this is not good. You know, I'm going to suffer from this. My real best interest is in acting in this other way, trying to cultivate Krishna consciousness and reading these books and hanging out with these people. So there's a tension there between your conditioned self and now you're, you know, the metaphor can be also like planting the seed. You're trying to cultivate this creeper or vine of desires, of wholesome desires to serve Krishna, spiritual master, like that. At the same time, you've got all of these deeply rooted weeds, which are other creepers, Prabhupada talks of, you know, material desires. So there's going to be difficulty there because we're so deeply conditioned. So you know, Prabhupada so much when you get to read the Bhagavad Gita and you come to what is it, I always forget the number 242, Vivasayatmaka Buddhir verse, and you know Prabhupada talks there. What is that? What is Krishna saying there? Well, he's telling Arjun, yeah, you've got to have determined intelligence, fixed intelligence. Vivasayatmaka Ekha Kurunandana, one-pointed. Otherwise, Bahushaka and Antasa, if you're all over the place, you know, your intelligence is splayed out. You don't have the strength, and that determination, which you know is born of you know, imbibing the knowledge and also taking part in the process, and then deciding to move in the right direction. You know, and there's going to be pitfalls and barriers and things to overcome. So when you you start practicing Krishna consciousness and you're able to overcome even an original one of them, a different one, you know, like maybe the most difficulty is for a lot of devotees, you know, for people just giving up drugs, in all forms, you know, even marijuana and everything else, you know, because you're used to it, and all your old friends, all your old previous friends were doing it, you know. So that means also distancing yourself from them, which is also painful. So that's a test right there. And the question is, okay, I know, you know, from reading here, and also I was in that wonderful kirtan at Prasadam, it was so good, you know, and those devotees are so nice, and I made friends with. So now you have two things going on, you know, and if you make the right decision, you know, the fortunate decision. No, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. You know, you're tempted to take LSD or whatever it may be. No, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So that's the thing that you overcome. There's a difficulty there. Now that's on the positive side. Just like we have Haridas Thakur, he showed by example how to tolerate not only pain but also the allurement of the greatest pleasure. They're both sides there, you see, and one feeds the other. You know, if you can't resist the pain, then you won't be willing to undergo suffering. You know, you won't be able to tolerate the suffering. But anyway, on our own individual level, if you're able to even once say, no, I'm not going to the party, my friends invited to me, I'm going to the temple, and that just doing that means that you become stronger. Or on the other side, you know, there's some like it often happens, even devotees experience, they get sick. You know, you get a cold, or you get a flu, or you may be laid up. You know, but darn it, even though I really can hardly get out of this bed, I'm still going to chant my rounds. Somehow I'm going to complete them today. You know, this happens like that. Then you become stronger on that side. You're tolerating suffering, but you're still going out. You know, going on with your service. Or, you know, most practically, book distributors. I mean, you read the history of how book distribution started, it seemed impossible, right? The books were all piled up in the different temples. There's TLCs over here, the Bhagavad Gita's over here. We know Prabhupada wanted them distributed, right? Everyone knows that, you know. But how? Maybe we'll go to the bookstores. You know, they first went to bookstores, you know. Okay, well, that's not going to really get many books out very fast. And then was it Buddhimanta? Was the first one to distribute, you know, he had all these Krishna books, and they were just so attractive, you know, these big books with the silver cover and paint. Huh? Yeah, the gas station. So did they have not any money or something? They wanted to pay for the gas. So he talked to the attendant, you know, and and he said, "Can we pay with these books? And look, they're so beautiful." And he agreed. In other words, he took money out of his own pocket, put it into the till for the gas, and he kept the book. So that was like a breakthrough, and it, you know, it resulted in gradually over time devotees undergoing extreme austerities to distribute books. You know, the greatest austerity really at first is all the no's you get, right, and battering your false ego, you know, and all of that. So if you're actually able to go through that and distribute even a few books, and you know, you get stronger. That's the practical reason how this works. I prayed for strength, and he gave me difficulties. But he also gave me the power to overcome those difficulties. You have that faith that Krishna will, like Prabhupada, just make my words such that it will attract their mind, that it will get through to him. And by persistence, Prabhupada didn't give up, and eventually, you know, you can hear those lectures in 22nd Avenue. Prabhupada is so excited, sometimes his voice cracks. You know, he's got an audience here, they just chanted the kirtan for an hour. What you don't hear is the kirtans in these lectures in 22nd Avenue. But they would go on for like an hour, you know, chanting. That's a substantial amount of time. And then people who stayed, some people would get up right after the kirtan and leave, but those who stayed were eventually, among them, were the ones who became the first full-time devotees. That was mostly sitting. Sometimes the devotees would stand up and dance, but most, I think, my impression, I think, is that they're sitting. So that's how, you know, that's what that's all about, is that you become so inspired that I really have to succeed here. And what is it going to take? Well, I have to overcome, you know, my own mind. I have to overcome the internal problems, sometimes external problems. And sometimes you fail at first, but you don't give up. You keep trying, and eventually, you know, it's a breakthrough, and then you've felt like you really made some advancement. I think that's what's... I'd like to get that list. It was like several of those. You know, that was all from Radhisham's class? Is that something that he also read somewhere? It sounds like a... Yeah, it sounds like something that, you know, is established, but they're good. They're all good. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.